Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to the Football Diary podcast. The football season has officially kicked off with the curtain raise of the Community Shield, which, if you win it, is an amazing springboard to the season. If you don't win it, it's just another game, isn't it, really? It's just a friendly. It means nothing. That's the nature of football fans, isn't it? And that's how me and Dave will be thinking today, no doubt, after Manchester City lift the so-called trophy, the first silverware of the season, and the first time they've won it for a number of years as well. So we'll be discussing what that means for both clubs. We'll also be looking at the transfer window, which is blowing up lately. Mazraoui and De Ligt are on their way to Manchester United. Dominic Solanke is off to Tottenham for big money, and Chelsea signing pretty much everyone under the age of 21, it appears. So what is going on there, we'll soon figure it out, hopefully. But let's start with the Community Shield if we must. It was a weird game, definitely a pre-season friendly feel to it, I think. Both teams didn't look like they were at their best or like they had their best teams out even, did they, Myles? But Manchester City in particular were unrecognisable, really. Quite a few young players in there, and they won on penalties in the end, 7-6. So what did you make of the game, first of all, and also what went well for Manchester City, do you think?
Yeah, the game was pretty typical of a Community Shield, really, where you've got a couple of lineups that you're not that familiar with, looking to get some match fitness. And ultimately, we didn't really see what we would expect of Man City in particular. And I think Man United were probably the better side for the majority of the game. But the quality that Man City have showed in moments. So you mentioned some of the young players that came in there, a couple of them that we're a bit more familiar with in Rico Lewis and Oscar Bob. They look like they're now cementing their places in Pep's plans, really. And Bob in particular, I thought was really threatening. Obviously, he got the assist for Bernardo's goal, but even before that, in the first half, Man City were much better as a side than Man United seemed to be. It took a bit of time for United to click into gear, and City seemed like they were willing to offer something. But that clinical nature that we're kind of familiar with Man City seemed to be lacking a little bit. I think they only managed one shot on target in the entire game, which is really uncharacteristic for them. But it's one of those, like you say, isn't it? No one really treats it that seriously anymore. It's kind of seen as that warm-up game. And I think teams will always want to win it, particularly when you're at Wembley in front of your fans, in front of a direct rival. Like, this was the perfect kind of game to have as the Community Shield, particularly after a kind of repeat of the FA Cup final, where it felt like Man City had a point to prove and Man United had some momentum to build. That was the only kind of jeopardy going into it. And Man City came out on top ultimately in a nothing kind of penalty shootout. Yeah,
the penalty shootout vibe was strange as well. And I think when Johnny Evans skied his penalty, it had a almost inevitable vibe about it, didn't it? He looked like a player who was in the twilight of his career, a centre-back no less, who didn't really want to take a penalty. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't bother me that we lost it, because I think if we'd have won, you're right, it would have been a real boost to United's kind of confidence going into the season. But there were positives. Dave, what positives did you take most out of this game? We created a lot of chances for a start, but any players or anything in the system that seemed to stand out for you and make you feel a bit more positive about the result?
I think there were more positives to take from this than I thought there would be. I think the one thing that stood out for me massively was our patterns of play. They were evident, and you could see them, especially in probably two of our best chances. The Amad Diallo, where he tries to lay it across the goal for Mason Mount, and the Marcus Rashford one in the first half, where he obviously hits it first time and it goes way wide of the goal. But the amount of passes that we put together before that goal from one end of the pitch to the other, the transitions themselves were just so much smoother. And it's nice to see that. It seems like there looked to be a bit more of a balance in that team as well. And I don't know if it's any coincidence whether when we play Bruno in that false nine, or we play a false nine rather than just the centre forward, whether it just actually adds a bit more solidity and a bit more balance to our side overall. So I think there were definitely positive things. I think some of the football we played was really good at times. I thought Diallo really looked good on that right-hand side in the first half particularly. I do think it will help massively when we get Mazraoui in, and it will be able to link play a little bit better going forward on that right flank, because I think that's something that we've lacked in the last few seasons.
Yeah, out of United's forward play as well, I think we created a better XG than City on the whole as well. And expectations were low, Dave. You're right going into this. And I think despite the penalty shootout loss, it does feel like it was a developmental milestone, considering the back four was so makeshift. And yeah, there was a few odd emissions as well. We didn't even see Xerxes, did we? I was really hoping we'd see him off the bench. He didn't appear. So yeah, a few things where you were like, wow, we could have done that. And yeah, we could have done that. But at the end of the day, I suppose it's the Community Shield, and City will be the happier of the two teams, clearly, but not gutted as a United fan, Dave. Are you I mean, looking at these two new signings, are you looking at this as now a chance to turn the page? Because what I noticed from the game was that not a lot felt different from a United fan's perspective. It felt very much like same old, just playing a little bit more cohesively. So it feels like we need fresh blood, doesn't it?
I don't think there's a case in this game. I actually think we played really nicely. I do think the expectation is always going to be there because it's Man United and the expectations are so high. So you will get some fans that are never happy with what we get. But I like the direction that we're going in. I think the players that we're bringing in are not players that are panic buys or to say, we've not got the money, so we're just going to buy, but we're going to have to buy this player as a fill gap. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like we'll work with what we've got to a certain degree if we don't have the money in certain situations. But I think De Ligt, is a really good signing if he can stay fit. Obviously, he's had his injury issues over the last few years, but I think he's on average over the last 4 years. I think he's missed like 11 games a season. That for club and country, which isn't actually any worse than some of our current players on the injury table. I think he's one of the best.
Is that not the problem, though? Is that not the problem that you've already got a set of centre-backs who have their limitations with fitness?
Well, you look at, we're probably getting rid of Lindelof. That'll be one gone. Obviously, Martinez was really unfortunate with that injury at the beginning of last season. I think that was just a bit of a freak incident. I do think there's been an element of of luck in there where we have lacked luck. But let's just hope it gets a little bit better. Euro, look at the start of this season. You couldn't have anticipated that happening. So I do think it's a case of we're adding strength in depth, and that's what you need. You look at the teams at the top of the league; they have players, a number of players who can start in that starting 11, and it won't make a difference to the way they play and how well they play.
Yeah, well, looking at the game as well, when Garnacho scored, it felt like it was United's for the taking because it was no more than they deserve, really. But the equaliser was a bit of a killer blow, wasn't it, Myles? I mean, obviously, Oscar Bob did really well to work the ball into that position in the first place, but Pellistri playing well out of position just was nowhere near Bernardo Silva. So, yeah, it was an odd one, wasn't it? And I think that was something that United were never going to recover from once that equaliser went in.
Yeah, it was destined to go to penalties at that point. And it's a shame because actually, for the majority of that second half, United were by far the better side and looked to really be keeping City at bay. And then it shows what it takes, really, doesn't it? It shows the quality that City have, that in one moment they can turn a game on its head like that. And for Bernardo Silva to be scoring a header, his ability and his finish, his technique's really good for it, but you shouldn't be letting that happen, really, no matter who you've got on the pitch. It's a funny one because your defensive options, I know obviously you've had these injuries and it's ruled Yoro out in particular, who you imagine would have featured, but where was Harry Mass in this? Because he had an excellent pre-season, didn't he? Yeah. And then you ended up playing Martinez left back out of position and no kind of youngster with the opportunity to really kick on from a good pre-season there.
I thought
it was weird.
I think with Man City as well doing the same and putting faith in youth, there was literally no excuse for United to not do the same. It wasn't a high-pressure game. It's one of those games that you can afford to lose. So, why not continue that faith? And, it's one of a few decisions I think I didn't quite understand on the day.
I thought it was strange Pellistri being on the bench, to be honest, because it looks like he's going to be on the way out. That's one of the rumoured outgoings. Yeah, and then it came back to bite us, really, that we didn't put a full back on there because you'd bank on a defender actually dealing with that situation at the back post.
And I think that's the thing that I took from this game, that there were passages where Man United did play very good football, but that's always going to happen because they've got very good footballers. Like Bruno Fernandes, I thought he was excellent in the game as a whole. I thought he was really, really dangerous. And him signing a new deal with United, it looks like as well, is huge news for them. And he's capable of those moments. But systemically, I still think the same problems existed where realistically, you were relying on Rashford to be your source of goals for the majority of the game. And he just lacks that clinical edge at the moment. You brought Garnacho on and immediately it got better. He looks so much more effective. But the first game of the season, I have no doubt that it'll be Rashford that starts out on that left and probably Anthony on the right. If we're honest, it's going to be difficult, isn't it? And I just felt like, it's what I said last week when we were doing the preview. Man United should kick on. They should get better. They've got the players there. But actually, the problems that existed last season, I don't think you solved. Mazraoui, a great player, but is no different really to what Dalot can bring on that right-hand side. De Ligt is a great player, but another one where I think the injuries are probably setting back a little bit. And compared to how much Varane was able to play last season, it's going to be quite a similar sort of profile. So you've got the same sort of thing. You've got Xerxes sat on the bench, who I don't know why he didn't get any minutes, really.
I don't think
So you're lacking that even 20 minutes in a... How do you get your match fitness? You need some game time, really, don't you? And I thought not bringing him on was a really interesting choice. I just don't see enough of a development from United. I feel like the things they have done are very much copy and paste. Just get Ten Hag the Ajax players and see what happens. I don't know. It's frustrating because I think you're right. They played some great football at times, and that's because they've got great players. But I feel like the system's still not well moulded yet.
Well, I feel like I'm going to sort of step in and say, we've not really changed an awful lot. I don't think yet. You're right. There's been like for like replacements where we've needed to really, but in terms of actual strengthening, not yet. I don't know where the budget is to buy anyone else, and that's the worry really. But I think having the coaching set up now differently is what is kind of made the difference to the passages of play we've seen. And I am sort of more confident now that there is a bit more of an identity there that we can shape and mould and improve. And as long as the coaching continues, that hopefully will improve. So there are signs of kind of positivity. I'm kind of clutching at straws a little bit though, because it doesn't feel very fresh and very new at the minute, does it, Dave? I mean, looking at the two transfers that are on their way in, obviously Mazraoui and De Ligt, I think again my concern is that we were trying to move away from giving like autonomy to the manager, and we've still got two former players of the managers coming in, and it just doesn't look great. I feel like we're setting ourselves up to be a meme all the time, and I don't doubt their quality, but I just wish we'd have unearthed a gem from somewhere else than kind of looking in the same places we have before, which is former Ten Hag players, don't you?
I think there's still a transition ongoing though. If you look at between director of football and the recruitment team, this is brand new. Look at Dan Ashworth, he's barely been in the job for not even 2 months. Yes, okay, the club will have scouts throughout, but then also I think they'll be looking at players that can make a difference now in the present, but also are a good profile in terms of age. Because I think I read something like we're trying not to sign too many players who are over the age of 25, 26, which United have always promoted youth and finding those players before they reach their superstardom, before they're actually they reach a certain price, which is what we've been doing the last few years. We've been buying players at 28, 29, 30. You look at Ibrahimovic, Cavani, Alexis Sanchez. That's just not what this club has done. If you look beyond the last the last decade. So I'm quite actually I'm quite positive by it all, to be honest. At the minute, you've got to be, because this club has had so much doom and gloom around it for so many years. You've got to look at it and hope that. Yes, obviously they've both played under Erik ten Hag in the past, but again, this is where the director of football now and Erik ten Hag have got to look at it, and they've made these changes with the coaches. Hopefully, they will be able to implement the style of football that he wants to put into play.
Yeah.
Can we take a poll on our Twitter, Mike, of how many weeks into the season before Man United break Dave's spirits? Because this weird optimism, I'm not used to it. I'm used to Dave coming on every week and telling me how rubbish Man United are. And right now he feels like he's talking about a league title charge. So
he's keeping me in check.
How many weeks until Dave goes, well, we're just crap, aren't we?
Well, last season it was match day 1 and 2, I think. Was that it? That was it. Our spirit was broken from then on. So obviously I hope it can't be much worse than that.
How long before I say on to next season?
We'll see how Friday night goes, shall we?
A quick word on City before we move on, Myles. And obviously some young players in the lineup. We talked about Oscar Bob. He's one of them players I don't think you can just say his name on its own, can you? Just Bob. It sounds weird. Oscar Bob.
The most American name ever for a Norwegian.
It doesn't sound Norwegian at all, does he? But obviously selling Julian Alvarez, which has been confirmed now to Atletico for good money, like £81 million or something. And I don't think Pep's looking to replace him for that position. And I think it looks like he's putting his faith in these new young attacking wide players. And I think Bob was one of the players that was kind of earmarked as potentially being there ahead of Cole Palmer, for example, and they let him go. And it's a brave call, and he's got a lot of faith in him. Do you think City will do any more business, or do you think that the players they've got, the young blood that's coming through, including obviously Savinho, who's been signed too, is enough for them?
Yeah, Savinho looked good actually when he came off the bench as well, didn't he? I think it's funny because I think Pep said before the game that they would bring in 2 players before the end of the window. No one knows who they are. I haven't heard anything really, or what sort of profile or position they'll be. I'll tell you one player that I think could really benefit from Alvarez going on, and it's a bit of an unknown quantity, a talent that not many people are aware of. But if you're looking for someone to kind of fulfill an attacking role, can play out wide, can play behind the striker, I'd keep your eye on Jack Grealish. I wonder...
Wondered where that was going then.
It's got to come good for him at some point, hasn't it? When you think about the players that weren't in the Man City squad for this game, Phil Foden still to come back. De Bruyne only came on very late. Grealish is another one. Like there's enough there to cope without Alvarez, you would imagine. But also, it's a lot of money that City can have in their back pocket now. We know that Pep likes to get his checkbook out.
We didn't actually mention, did we, the fact that the investigation into City's charges is going to see its hearing, I think, in November. And they, I think, are 15-1 to be relegated with bookies. This season could get interesting for them too still, couldn't it?
Never going to happen.
I don't think they'll get more than a slap on the wrist, do you?
Well, what are they supposed to do? The league going to kick them out? Like, they're not going to do that, are they? Like, it's too much of a personal loss. Like, we've seen this week, sorry to bring this up and throw your boys under the bus. We saw this week about the COVID payments that Man United receive. If it's in the league's interest, they'll support the big boys. Of course they will. Man City will be fine.
Well, let's move swiftly on to money elsewhere in transfers in the Premier League. We won't dwell on City until it comes to that, I guess, until it's back in the news again. But Dominic Solanke is being recruited by Tottenham for around, is it 60, 65 million, something like that. And it's been a bit of a slow burner in his career, hasn't he? Still only, I think, 26 as well. So still got a lot of years ahead of him. And has been one of the most prolific strikers in the league, English strikers especially, in the last 12 months. And looks like a good move for him, Dave. It's one that he's kind of earned already before playing for Liverpool, of course. He's played for Chelsea too, but hasn't quite caught fire yet. For English youth teams, he's been really good too, come through the system. And he probably was unlucky to miss out on the Euros as well, as one of the most informed English strikers. So he's got his chance with Spurs. How do you think he'll get on, mate?
I think it's a really good signing. I question the price. I think that is a lot. That's a little bit excessive for me. But I think for what he offers in terms of his finishing ability, but his all-round play as well, and he's able to link play so nicely with those inside or wide forwards. I think it's a great coup for them. I mean, it might put a spanner in the works of our predictions for the relegation fight now if Bournemouth don't look to get a replacement in. But I think it's great for Tottenham. I think he's 26, 27 in October, I think.
Yeah.
So he's still at a pretty good age. And if you look at his profile, he's similar to Harry Kane. He likes to kind of drop deep, pick the ball up and really kind of get involved with play as well. So it's probably that sort of profile that they've been trying to replace this window, and it looks like they've gone and done just that.
I guess the question for me, Myles, is whether he can handle the pressure, first of all, of making this jump again to a fairly big club, a club that's looking at a top 6 finish, hopefully, maybe even top 4. Obviously, to fill in the shoes of Harry Kane, which is going to be on his mind too. It'd be an opportunity for him. But with the money as well, and the money that's been spent on him, is kind of par for the course for, I think, for a number 9 in any league in the world at the minute, is it, to pay a fortune, to pay a premium like that, especially when they've proven to have scored goals in that same league. How are you feeling about the move? And do you think he could kind of put that aside, behind him rather, and just get on with scoring goals?
I'll be honest, the first question that came into my head was, how much is Ollie Watkins worth then if you're going to get 65 for Solanke? Ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
I can't see this being as much of a success as maybe Dave's talking about, if I'm honest. And it's weird because I feel like maybe it's just because it's Spurs. If Arsenal signed him, I could see him doing really well there. But when it's Spurs, you just expect it to kind of fall flat on its face. They've loaded that attacking area of the pitch so much over the last couple of years. If you think about the money they spent on Richarlison, Brennan Johnson, Kulusevski, they've just brought Werner back as well. They've still got Son. And now Solanke. That's 6 players competing for 3 spots. And you're spending 65 million on a number 9. Now, if you spend that kind of money on a forward, what do you want from him? Because realistically, that's the sort of money that should be getting you right up the league table. Or it's an investment that you think you can get more money back on. Well, that's not going to happen. They're not going to make a profit on Solanke now, are they? He's a good age. He's in his prime, but no resale value really. Because by the time you want to move him on, it's going to be 30. So I don't see the logic in this one, if I'm honest, when I think you probably could have gone out and got Ivan Toney for less. I know
I don't
obviously
think they're
slightly
getting for
older.
less, though. I think it'd
You
be about
don't?
the same. I think from what Brentford are asking, I think that's why a lot of clubs aren't looking at Tony, because he's got a year left on his contract as well. So
Yeah.
Solanke felt like the most proven option available right now.
I think a year left on his deal. I think Brentford panic towards the end of the window and could sell Tony for quite little. I think Tony is one of the ones that we'll be watching on deadline day, to be honest. I think someone will probably move for him then. I'm not sure who. But I don't know. I don't trust Spurs to make players better, really. And
Yeah.
I can see a world where Solanke is not the kind of the big fish anymore and he kind of fades into obscurity. I don't feel like this Spurs side are organised enough to get the best out of him. I think that's the difference. Iraola's system really worked around Solanke, and I don't think Spurs' will when you've got so many players trying to fulfil that kind of role already. I don't think this is a given that he scores as many goals as he did last year by any means.
I think another problem which they'll have as well in the next year, Heung-min Son's 32 now. He's not getting any younger, and he's been a massive player for them.
Yeah.
So they're going to have a couple of issues that will need to be solved, of course.
Because that's like Solanke drops deep, he just occupies Maddison's space. He stays high, and you wonder what the wingers do to bring him in. Does this mean Richarlison just doesn't play again for Spurs as well? Like I feel like there's more questions about this one than answers necessarily.
Yeah.
I can't see Spurs being good this year. I said it last week. I can see them 8th, 9th this year, and I don't feel like Solanke coming in changes that picture, to be honest.
No, same. I think it's what you said, Miles. I think he's a talented forward and he's a great goal scorer in the right team, the right system. And I don't think Spurs is that team or that system, weirdly. And the way they've been playing under Ange Postecoglou as well. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work. So, yeah, we'll see. We might be proven wrong. He might be one of the most prolific players in the league again. But moving on to another player who was one of the most prolific and one of the most impressive going forward in the league last season, and that's Pedro Neto, who we're big fans of on this podcast, aren't we? And we raved about him at Wolves last season. He was the driving force of the way Wolves moved through the gears and countered. He was kind of a player that played on the counter really well. So to see him at Chelsea and a team that under Maresca as well isn't expected to play counter-attacking football, they're going to hold possession quite a lot. Seems odd to begin with. But when you stack that up against a squad of nearly 50, and how many players in his position currently? I don't know what's going on at Chelsea, but I feel a bit sad that Pedro Neto's moved there. Don't you, Dave? I feel like it's a little bit of a waste of a talent. And what player looks at Chelsea and goes, yeah, that looks like a club where I can progress my career?
I mean, it's an attractive proposition. You know, if you look at what they've done, obviously, over the last decade, Chelsea, in terms of titles that they've won, but also the location, which is, it's a massive pull for players. So I'm not surprised as such, but I'm like you. I just feel as though he deserves a bit more, really, for what he's going to get. I just hope that he gets the game time, because he's had these issues, Neto, with injuries over the last couple of years. He was out for such a long time. If he goes there and doesn't get the time that he probably deserves to get on the pitch, it'd be a real shame. And then that's the overall feeling I'm kind of getting from this.
Yeah, well, Chelsea are making moves in the transfer window, aren't they, Miles? That's their 11th, as we record, signing of the season, and they're touching 50 players in their squad now. And I guess the question for you is, if you are a player that's already at Chelsea, especially in Neto's position, I mean, we've seen the way they've kind of treated the likes of Trevor Chalobah and Conor Gallagher and sort of left them to train with the under-21s because they're not in the plans going forward. They've been quite brutal and businesslike. So how would you feel if, for example, you like Mykhailo Mudryk or Raheem Sterling?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Mudryk, Sterling, Madueke, who have all not been at the club that long, and all of a sudden see their positions completely under threat. I don't know with Chelsea. I can't see what the plan is still. I don't think there is a clear plan. They move managers on, they move players on until something works. And it's a shame that you're bringing in some of the better players in the league to kind of fade into obscurity, like Neto, really, like you say. Like, again, another one where so many other clubs would have been a better fit for it if he was going to move on. Well, stay at Wolves. Have another year at Wolves and then see where you're at, rather than jumping at Chelsea's money. I find it really, really frustrating because, again, it's not something that makes me look at Chelsea and think, oh, yeah, they're pushing for top four now. It's another one that makes me look at, they haven't got a clue what they're actually trying to achieve here. They don't know what they actually want to do. So, I don't know. It's a lot of money to be putting out. And now they're looking at Felix as well. It's just fantastic for us, isn't it?
It's mad. That's mental. When you said this morning about the reports that João Felix was on the radar of Chelsea, I thought someone's having a laugh here on social media, but multiple sources have confirmed that's probably going to happen. I mean, he's been at Chelsea already, obviously, Dave, as we know, and had flashes of brilliance, but his star has waned a bit. And I feel like he needed a club that was kind of on the up and maybe looking at Champions League football. Certain Aston Villa maybe would have been a good fit for him, which was on the cards for a while. And I think that's kind of why you're fuming in a way, isn't it, Myles? But Dave, what's your feeling as a football fan as well? I think I want Chelsea to be competitive and to be true to their values and to, I don't know, play football and play the system in a way that makes sense. And I think if you're a Chelsea fan looking at this, obviously there's some weirdos on Twitter who will be addicted to transfer news. But my head's spinning at the thought of what 11 they're going to put out, isn't it yours?
I just find it all a bit comical, to be honest. I saw a funny post on social media actually. It was to say it's inevitable at some point Chelsea were going to run out of players to buy that haven't already played for them. So they're going to have to re-sign players that have already played for them, which I thought was quite funny. But yeah, it is a strange one, and it reeks of recklessness for me. Because, I mean, it only looks like they're looking to get him involved in the deal because they are worried that the Conor Gallagher deal is going to fall through. But how do you feel if you're João Felix in that situation?
Apparently he wants the move.
Exactly. Why would you want to go there just to solve that issue? Would you not have your own career? First thought, would that not be your sole sort of priority to sort that out? Because let's be honest, ever since he left Benfica, his career has gone on the downward slope, hasn't it?
Well, they're asking, I think, 45 million for him, which shows the scale of his drop-off, doesn't it?
Villa apparently offered 35, and that's why they couldn't get the deal done early, because that was what they were talking about as a fee. They kind of valued him at. It's crazy, because I still see a world where Chelsea get him and then still go in for Victor Osimhen before the end of the window.
Still rumoured, yeah.
If you're Maresca, how on earth are you managing this squad? It's your first big job, and you've got this dressing room full of... How do you keep Felix, Mudryk, Sterling, Madueke, Palmer and Kunku, and another potential forward happy? Did they even say Neto then? I don't know. Exactly. It's ridiculous. I'm probably forgetting someone else. Maybe
That's
in the comments
even talking about the midfield.
Yeah. Just brought Drewsbury Hall in as well. Where's he playing now? I find it mental. And I find
an eighth goalkeeper as well. They've just recruited an eighth goalkeeper and sent him right back on loan.
Goalkeepers. Well, at least he's not around at the squad. Otherwise, the bus would have got a bit ridiculous, wouldn't it?
There's this influx of young players coming in there as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
And a load of Brazilians that I never heard of could be any position. But they're probably all wingers as well. Who knows?
Yeah, I think we're not even concerned as fans that they are kind of cheating the system or signing loads of players to get better. I think we're just worried about the players more than anything. For me, it's the welfare of this talent that worries me, because they're back and forth, shipped out on loan, bought for big money. It just looks like some kind of like human trafficking system, doesn't it? But it's not. It's just pure business. It's a business model where they're looking to sign these players on for mega money, to sell them on, and I'm not sure whether that's going to work, because that's a long game you're going to play. I mean, Neto's just signed a 7-year contract. 7 years. That still strikes me as like ridiculous, because football changes so quickly. I don't know.
I think if I was a Chelsea fan, I would almost be worried though. Because if Bowley gets bored of this at some point and tries to walk away,
big liability. Yeah,
100%. He's brought in 35 players now. He's only been there 2 years. If I'm an Everton fan and I'm reading that I might get another points deduction for spending 6.5 million too much in a year, and I'm watching Chelsea do this, I'll be honest, I think I'd start watching non-league football. It's ridiculous the way that Chelsea are being run.
It's moving away from the football that we know and love, and even as opposition fans, we want to see Chelsea competitive and have an identity more than anything. I don't know what their identity is anymore. It's really strange, isn't it? How about this club's identity? Plymouth. They've just been smashed on their opening day. Game against Sheffield Wednesday, 4-0, was it? But Sheffield Wednesday are obviously a very good team to come up against in Wayne Rooney's first game in charge of the club. But obviously questions are being asked now, Dave, about his suitability for the role. He obviously had a busy summer of kind of punditry and TV work, and that's been levelled against him as a criticism when he should have been probably on the training ground a bit more and all this. But we said before, when the whole Birmingham fiasco was happening with Wayne Rooney, that he needs to kind of start lower in the pyramid, doesn't he? He needs to kind of earn his stripes. And I still feel like Plymouth in the Championship, only just in the Championship as well, is still a bit too high for a player with his reputation, because he's kind of a targeted player now, a targeted manager, isn't he? The club will have a target on its back because Wayne Rooney's there. And then a result like this happens and it's like, well, here we go again. So I feel for him in a way, but maybe he's his own worst enemy taking a job like Plymouth.
I think he tried to do that, didn't he, at the beginning of his career? If you look at obviously what he did with Derby County, very nearly kept them up in the Championship. Actually did a great job, to be honest. And then obviously went over to America and had that little stint there, which was a bit of an odd one. But I just think it's such a risk for Plymouth. If you look at the season they had last year, they were so close to going down, so close. And this is the decision that the board decides to make, is to bring Rooney in, and he's all of a sudden going to turn them into a mid-table Championship team of sorts. I just think it's a lot to ask. And I feel for him a little bit. I do feel for Rooney, and they've actually quite a good pre-season from what I've seen. But Sheffield Wednesday are a great team. If you look at how well they played throughout last season, on the back of the manager's dismissal, I think when Danny Roll came in, he's done such a great job. Yeah. So I wouldn't be worrying too much too soon. But again, to get beat 4-0, I think they only had 2 shots in the game as well.
Oh, defensively, they were just awful. All the goals were just an absolute mess. Like, it felt like there was no pressing, no urgency from the players. They still seem really leggy, and I don't know what training they've done in pre-season, but it felt like it had gone out of the window. And I don't know how much you can level at Rooney for that, but
that's what he mentioned,
start.
Wasn't it, about the urgency of the players? Just go to the basics and the foundation of football, of getting involved in tackles, intensity just was completely off. So who knows?
I love Wayne Rooney, though. Obviously, he's got a place in United fans' hearts because of his amazing goal-scoring record and how good a player he was. And I think everybody's kind of rooting for ex-players who have been at the top of their game, aren't they? And want to see them do well as managers. And I think he's a really well-spoken guy. And I think when he's been speaking on TV, he's got a lot of good, positive things to say about the game. And he's got a really keen eye for detail. So I don't know how I can see him turning this around, Myles, and whether he can. But it's early days. How are you seeing his future? Can you see him lasting the season?
Not really. It's a shame, isn't it? I think that spell at Derby gave everyone a weird sense of optimism around him. But he had a situation there that he really needed to kind of get his back up against. And he seemed to be good at developing that sort of siege mentality. But tactically, have we seen anything of Wayne Rooney that makes us think, yeah, this is the one? Like, he's probably got a bit of a pull in the transfer market. I'm surprised we've not kind of seen more of that, and maybe they'll do a bit more before the end of the window, and that might help him improve the squad a bit. But generally speaking, there's nothing about him right now that screams to me, yeah, you'll make this a success. Fair play to him. Like, it's not the big glamour tie that you might expect of a player of his name being at Plymouth. No disrespect to them as a club, but like Dave says, they were flirting with relegation to League One last year, and perhaps that's a better level for Rooney. Perhaps if they do go down and stick with him, it's a good chance for him to build something from there. But I don't know, it's not one that seems destined for success, is it?
No, and it's a shame because I think he's a kind of a character and a personality in English football that you do kind of want to see do well. And it's difficult to know where an ex-pro that's been at that level can start and make a difference, because they're so used to winning trophies and so used to success that it's kind of a bit humbling to step down to that level, which is why it's brave and bold in some ways. But then you look at his opposite number in the Sheffield Wednesday dugout, who's had the opposite career, where he had to retire quite early and has come up really well and has made Sheffield Wednesday into a really quite formidable force in the league this season. And you see the kind of direction each club is going, and maybe a big name is a target on a club's back, and it's not a positive thing after all, but a shame either way if he doesn't make it a success there. Let's move on to another standout result in the Football League after the kick-off this weekend, and that's Wrexham winning their first home game in League One, 3-2 against Wycombe Wanderers. Now, they're 10-1 to win the league this season, so I think they're like 5th favourites or something like that. But some of the players in their team, I'm surprised it's as low as that, because League One's quality is a bit hit and miss, isn't it, Myles? And I mean, some of the players that scored today, obviously that's this weekend, Cleworth and Marriott and Fletcher, Ollie Palmer with the assist. These are all players, of course, Paul Millen as well, that could probably get in championship teams, you'd imagine. Looked good for them so far, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest, I watched the highlights of this, and my biggest takeaway was how bad League One defending is. It was so scrappy at times. But Wrexham showed a lot of quality in all of the goals, really. I thought the way that each of them were finished off just showed something different. Even the corner, the first one, okay, that one's not so glamorous, but having an academy player that's kind of come up from within getting your first goal in League One is excellent when you consider that a lot of people might throw the kind of money claims at them and say, well, you've signed all these ex-Premier League players or these players above this level. It's nice to see that they're developing something from the bottom up as well that's meant that they got some success in this game. And Fletcher's goal was excellent. I think the fact that he's still there and kind of performing at that level is really good. And Wycombe are an interesting side to come up against. Obviously, they've been in the Championship not that long ago, so it's a good first test for them as well. So to get through that, I think they'll look to solidify defensively before the next fixture. But generally speaking, yeah, all smiles for Wrexham fans.
Yeah, Phil Parkinson was saying after the game that he was really pleased with the first 35, 40 minutes because of how Wrexham just came out of the traps. They went into a 2-0 lead. Probably should have scored more to consolidate that as well. But when obviously Wycombe threw caution to the wind and tested Wrexham's defence, they kind of came undone. That'll be a concern for them, won't it?
It's something I don't think is unfamiliar to Wrexham fans though. The last couple of years, they've been involved with a lot of high-scoring games, and I think it's something that will be a theme throughout the season. It's something you enjoy though, especially as a neutral, just to see these kind of games where it just go, back and forth. But yeah, I think they're in a good spot. I think if you look at a lot of the players that they've brought in actually as well, so a lot of them have got experience at League One level. A couple even got experience at Championship level. They've just brought Ollie Rathbone in, who's obviously a former United Academy player, so I've seen him play a little bit at under 18s level. He's actually a really talented midfielder. I think to get him from Rotherham, who was really one of their key men coming down from the Championship next year, I think it just speaks volumes about their catch and their lure and pull that they've got from some of these players, and they want to be part of this project. And I just think it's encouraging. It's an encouraging start. It's a good start to get a win. Get off the mark. I think there'll be probably a lot of nervous players in there, and a little bit of nervousness around the club, probably, to be honest, because this is a massive jump and a massive step up from where they've been at. Yeah,
and deserved as well. And I think they've levelled up as they've progressed quite nicely. It's not been a huge jump in the quality of players they've signed, apart from obviously initially signing a player like Paul Mullen was a statement, wasn't it? But as they progressed through this league especially, they've signed players at the level they need to be at, which is what you want really. But I think the burning question, Myles, and I think I know what your answer is going to be for this, is can they finish above Birmingham City?
Well, yes, definitely. When you consider that Birmingham have spent 15 million in League One this summer,
mental.
And then still had to get a late penalty to even get a point against Reading at home, who, by the way, have spent 15 million in the last 5 years and have been in the Championship for the duration of that. That's crazy. Reading haven't had a single player come in for a transfer fee in the last 3 years. And Birmingham are in League One spending 15 million. That's nuts, isn't it? And yet still didn't win. Fantastic.
Well, we'll obviously watch Wrexham closely this season, but it might be the first time in the last few years where they've actually going to be on a level playing field, if not slightly below the spending power of some of the clubs around them, as we've just heard. So yeah, watch this space for some more Wrexham chat as and when they do weird and wonderful things. To finish the pod, guys, I've got a bit of a debate to settle. And I'm going to put this to the viewers as well. Might even do a Twitter poll. But I think you know where this is going. We've been accused of agreeing on stuff too much lately, haven't we? But there's one thing we disagreed on quite fundamentally this weekend, and that was Andre Onana and his antics in the penalty shootout, which we didn't touch on. I thought I'd save it till the end just to sort of open up the can of worms and see what the viewers think. Now, Myles, you were quite vocal about Onana showing himself up a little bit in a big game, challenging someone like Erling Haaland to put the ball where he wanted it to go, which he's obviously not going to do. And Dave, I suppose me and you were kind of not that bothered about it, as if it was like, well, you've got to try these things sometimes. What's your thoughts, viewers? Do you think Onana's just a clown that's asking to be shown up? Or do you think that he's got to try these things to get a psychological advantage and it's only the Community Shield? I'll start with you, Myles. What's your thoughts? Tell the viewers.
Was this utterly embarrassing from a player who's already a meme, just making himself look more and more ridiculous against the world's best striker, your local rivals, in a penalty shootout where you've got the competitive edge at that point, and then you've just invited them to literally laugh in your face during? I'd be fuming if I was a United fan. He looked like an idiot.
Dave, I mean, I think your take on it was that basically he was trying what a lot of goalkeepers do, and that's just to try and get some kind of psychological advantage or to distract the player. But the player was Erling Haaland. So do you think in hindsight maybe it was a bit of a mistake?
Obviously, it was a more flamboyant way of trying to put the penalty taker off, wasn't it? I mean, you look at what goalkeepers do. We've seen Jersey do that. I did mention this, and Myles obviously came back and said, well, yeah, but he actually won them the penalty shootout. Which,
that's what goalkeepers do.
But you don't. It doesn't always go your way. You win some, you lose some. And let's be honest, I don't think me and you, Mark, have probably both not been massive admirers of Onana at times. But I wasn't massively. I didn't feel that angry about it. I just thought it's one of those.
Yeah, I think I mean, you're wearing, just for context, viewers and listeners, if you can't see what's going on, Myles is wearing an Argentina goalkeeper shirt today. And I think in solidarity with his opinion that the clown prince of goalkeeping, Emi Martinez, is an example of how to do it correctly and to become a world champion at doing it. I think that's the point you were hammering home. I'm actually not that bothered by what Onana did. And I think in this game in particular, I wasn't that fussed, really. I don't think any less of him. But what do you think, viewers? Give us your say, have your say, and we'd love to know what the balance of opinion is. I checked X quickly before we went on here, and it's pretty split 50-50, even amongst the United fan base, where they're like, what is this clown doing? He's not helping our look to the world either. And like you say, Myles, it's a thing where he can't really afford to make himself look stupid when he's just had a bit of an up and down season. So, yeah, interesting to hear your take. But that is all we've got time for this week. Any final words, guys? Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to do this because you won't do it because you're a massive cynic towards this. But do keep an eye out on our socials this week because the season's starting and that means fantasy football for those of you that are brave enough to do it. Last year it was really nice seeing a turnout for our league, so we'll be doing that again, obviously. And you boys will put a team in there. Mike will forget after a week. Dave might do 3 weeks at a push, and then we'll probably just see me getting battered by a load of listeners. But yeah, please do join the league and share it with people. It's nice to get some traction on the pod through it as well.
Agreed, yeah. Like it's just nice to interact with fans in any way. And I am a cynic about fantasy football. But Myles, you are going to become a father this year, so I'd like to see how well you're going to keep up your own team, mate.
It's a great excuse loaded for me. I appreciate that.
And if you check my team from last year, I basically put 10 players that were the cheapest in their position and Erling Haaland, and that was my team all season. I was set up to lose. I did not take it seriously at all.
You'd have to do that this year because Erling Haaland is 15 million on the FPL, which is a new record. It's incredibly tight.
But definitely, yeah, do join the league that we're going to set up. I'm sure we'll put the details and the code on socials. But next weekend, guys, is the big kickoff. Cannot wait. Please do join us for that. We've still got our season preview and predictions live on YouTube, and go check that out if you want to see what we said a week ago, because it's changing all the time, isn't it? With every transfer that's made, it looks a little bit more distant from reality. But hey-ho, that's the nature of predictions. Until next week, guys, thank you. Enjoy the weekend's football, and I'll speak to you next week.
See you later, guys.
See you again.